Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nemeka Onyeka Obiriri. I titled this clip The Joseph's Principles, P2B and the Yar Adua's Examples and Haters Analysis. Joseph, in the book of Genesis, it's recorded that Joseph, the son of David, the son of Jacob, was 17 years old when he was sold into slavery by his brothers because of his visions. He was a visionary young man. He was a young man that dreamt into the future. And this is what is lacking in many of us in Nigeria today. This is what is lacking in the current leadership we have in Nigeria across the 3 tiers and arms of government. We do not have visionary leaders. Visionary leaders like Dr. Michael Obara, visionary leaders like Sir Ahmadu Bello, visionary leaders like Chief Bafemi Awolowo, visionary leaders like De Simon Bakwe, visionary leaders like Alhaji Lateef Jakonde, men that saw and envisioned big. Dr. Michael Obara, 39-year-old medical doctor, premier of the old Eastern Nigeria, visioned a massive economy, built, engaged the American consultant, the Latterton Group, developed a world-class vision of how he wanted to build his old Eastern Nigeria, and within 6 years, he built a massive economy that was growing at 9% per annum, and that was the fastest growing in the whole Commonwealth, and created 214-kilometer industrial corridor. Interestingly, as at that particular time, the nations of South Korea, the nations of Singapore, were far behind Nigeria in terms of productivity, in terms of economic growth, in terms of GDP per capita. Please take out time to go and look at history. Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And the scripture says, study to show yourself approved. And it says, in all your gettings, no matter whatever your desires be, the most important desire, the most important acquisition that any human being should seek is knowledge, is understanding, is wisdom. Joseph had a dream, and at 17, he was sold into slavery. From slavery, he went to prison. At 30, he was able to tell the dream of the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, and then interpreted it. He knew his dream, understood it, and interpreted it accurately. The professors, the astrologers, men that were reputed to be graduates, PhD holders, could not interpret it. 30-year-old boy. And of course, the Pharaoh then being a wise man, not the nepotistic, incompetent things we have in Nigeria that are only after surrounding themselves with leg-spittling human beings that will help them to loot and launder money. Not people that will look them eyeball to eyeball and tell them the truth. Just like Obasanjo did by recruiting some of the best hands in Nigeria. And he built an economy that was robust, an economy that had 4 million middle class that could afford brand new cars. Anyway, let me not digress. Joseph had a dream. And what was that dream? A dream of 7 years of plenty and a dream of 7 years of famine. Of course, any human being that lives on planet Earth knows that every time is not a boom cycle. There's always boom and there's always doom cycle. It's the nature, the way God made the universe. So Joseph understood by the dreams what the 7 years would be and the next 7 years. And of course, he spoke to Pharaoh and Pharaoh gave him the latitude and authority. He reigned for 80 years. And for the first 7 years, he gathered wealth for Egypt and saved. He did not squander everything like most of our leaders will do. They will squander every revenues. They will even borrow. And just like Buhari did, he even sold our crude oil in advance. He even sold the future of the generations yet to unborn. And today he's sitting in Daura picking his teeth while Nigeria bleeds. So that is the kind of man Joseph was. Joseph saved. And of course, during the time of famine, the rest of the whole world came to Egypt to come and buy grain and to come and buy food. It's not like Nigeria that Ukraine that is at war is dashing grain, that even borrowed grain from ECOWAS. I'm not sure if they've paid. Egypt was the wealthy based on the wisdom of a 30-year-old boy. and people were coming to buy food from Egypt. Yar Adua and the P2B are the nearest example of men who understood the principle of creating wealth, saving wealth during the time of boom, and not stealing the wealth. Yar Adua, the good man Yar Adua, was the only man in Nigeria since 1999 that declared his assets and liabilities publicly, and that of his wife, Torah Yar Adua. God bless his soul. He declared the rule of law. Very transparent man, very honest man. He was the only governor in P2B that have record of leaving office and leaving savings for their successors. Peter left 25 billion naira in Access Bank, Fidelity Bank, and Peter left $150 million. If Obi and Yar and Co had not drank away the $150 million that Peter left behind and incurred massive debt over a number of people, if that money had still been in the account today, that money would have been worth 247 billion naira. And when you hear some of the Rono clowns, some of the people who want to play politics abuse P2B for saving money, I begin to wonder the kind of human beings we have in Nigeria and how they reason. South Korea, Singapore, in 1960 to 66, we are far behind Nigeria in terms of every positive economic indicator. Today, Singapore, a stretch of 751 square mile land mass, 5 million people, less than Alimosho in Lagos State in land mass. Their sovereign wealth fund, the two sovereign wealth funds in Singapore, is over $1 trillion. 1 trillion, I didn't say $1 billion. South Korea, they have a sovereign wealth fund of almost about $189 billion. Okonjo-Iweala, when he was minister, wanted us to do sovereign. I know how they fought her. Today, Okonjo-Iweala is at WTO, adding value to the world, but we didn't manage the resources God gave to us. What we just saw, what happened at National Assembly today. Today is March 12th. So what happened? How Senator Jerigbe came up and told how they shared 500 million naira to senior ranking senators. That's how they waste and fritter away our national resources. They eat their own. They eat the one that is meant for their children. They eat the one that is even meant for children unborn. In the US, the US budget for 2023, total national budget was 6.9 trillion. Budget that was provided for both the rep and the senate of the US was $3 billion. If you put a percentage of what the National Assembly of the US got to national budget, it's about 0.0018% of the national budget. If you apply the same thing to Nigerian Senate and rep, they should not get anything more than 15 billion naira as budget for 1 year. But for the first time in the history of Nigeria, they moved their budget from 120 billion to 348 billion. You can see the kind of things that are coming out of that place. They're sharing 500 million among them. And these are ex-governors who, after looting 8 years in their state, these are ex-governors who are on massive pensions, yet greed will not allow them to say, okay, sit down, okay. These are men in their 70s, late 60s, 80s. Greed and fear of God. They are not even thinking about afterlife. Common sense, fear of God. Even the thought that they are very soon going to join their ancestors will not make them to sit down and reason, okay, hey, let us just do it right. All they need just to share. And even after sharing, it's not even enough. They are still going to, rather than provide oversight function on the MDAs, they will be pursuing them to see how they can still get inflated contracts and cuts. This is the kind of active crime scene we have created in this land. Joseph Principle. I am a banker, and I read banking and finance, and I know there are 3 critical needs for money. The transactional need for money, the precautionary need for money, and the speculative need for money. The transactional need for money is the money you need for your physiological need: food, shelter, clothing. That's the transactional need for money. The speculative need for money is the one you need for, you have maybe after you have eaten and clothed yourself and shelter, then you can now start thinking about investments. The precautionary need for money are the monies you set aside in times of emergency. In Nigeria today, we do not have a national fiscal policy or state fiscal policy that provides for these three their needs for money. All they just do is eat, swallow, borrow more. Before our very eyes, we thought that Jonathan was profligate until Buhari came. Jonathan left an economy that was growing at, of course, it was tanking at an average of about 3.5% then per annum. Inflation was single digit, 8.8%. That was 2014. He left a foreign reserve of $29 billion, $20 billion unencumbered. He left exchange rates at 199 official, 202 parallel market. And we thought that was it. He left a total national debt of 12 trillion and external debt of 10 billion. By the time Buhari left in 2023, external debt had ballooned to 43 billion. National debt had gone from 12 trillion to 77 trillion, even 87 trillion. By the time the ways and means he created 23 trillion, 23 trillion plus interest of 7 trillion, we are capitalized. We had 87 trillion. To worsen matters, he even sold crude oil into the future. And one thing that baffles me is that how these guys sit down and how they sleep. And you see them playing politics. They will be praising him. He did this. He didn't steal. But he superintended over the worst last enemy. Well, Yar Adua wouldn't have allowed such to happen under him. That's the truth. Such wouldn't have happened under Obasanjo. Such wouldn't have happened under Joseph, the son of Jacob. I pray that God will help us. Nigeria is totally broke, and we can fix it. And the message here is not just for, it's for us too as individuals. Are you listening to me? Think about your life. There's something my father told me while he was alive. And my father said, if you cannot save from the little salary you make, you cannot save when you start making billions. Because you learn savings from the little that you have. Even the insects, even the ants, understand the importance of gathering in times of plenty, in times of dry season. So in times when it is not raining, so that when it starts raining, they can be able to gather. That is why Jesus said, go to the ant, thou sluggard, lazy and slothful man, learn his ways and be wise. I pray that God will open our eyes to see the truth. In your individual life, if you cannot cut your coat according to your clothes, if you can, some of us can survive under any atmosphere. God has given us that kind of mentality to adjust. Life is not about food and bread and the cars you drive or the houses you build. Life is all about impact. How do you impact your world? How do you implant his glory? And how do you impart humanity? You are of no use to God when you are not adding value to mankind, not taking from mankind. America is so great today because their principle is, what can you do for humanity, for the society? That is why somebody like Warren Buffett has almost weighed $48 billion of his monies to charity. But here in Nigeria, even those who purport to be billionaires are still trying to see how they can stifle the life out of the poor, how they can increase the price of their commodities by 200%. Tell me why a bag of cement will move from 5,000 naira in December to 17,000 naira in February 2024 within a space of two months. What input cost did they add that increased their cost by 200%? That is the kind of, we try as much as possible to see how we can squeeze life out of the poor. I call it elitist gangsterism. And every Sunday we'll go to church. Every Friday we'll run to mosque. And we'll deceive ourselves. And the worst part of it is we have in Nigeria today, many, just like the 400 lying prophets of Ahab, who could not look Ahab in the truth and tell him the truth. Except the young one, Micaiah. They said we have many religious bandits in the land. As long as they collect their own fact, the tithe and offering, and they drive big jets and everything, they don't care. There are only very few of them, like Oyedekmo, like Mommy Sarah Maku, like Enenche, that are talking. Others have, and of course, if you hear me, and as they start talking, others have swallowed super glue. God have mercy on us. May God never allow us to be counted among the mob who chose Barabbas over Jesus Christ. God bless you.